Welcome to this explainer. I am so thrilled you're here today because we're going to be looking at one of the most absolutely astonishing illusions in the natural world. I actually want you to start by just closing your eyes for a second. Imagine you're taking a quiet, peaceful walk deep through an Australian forest. You're just completely immersed in nature. And then, suddenly, that tranquility just breaks. You hear the distinct, desperate cry of a baby bird begging for food. A few seconds later, you hear the sharp mechanical click of a camera shutter. Then, out of nowhere, the heavy roaring motor of a chainsaw fires up. And just as you're trying to process all of that, the loud, repetitive blare of a car alarm starts ringing through the trees. So you look around, right? You're expecting to see a crowd of people, a construction crew, maybe a lost vehicle, but the forest is completely empty. There is absolutely nobody around. What if I told you that every single one of these wildly different sounds is coming from a single bird?
Section 1. Meet the master mimic, the superb lyrebird of southeastern Australia.
Now, at first glance, this bird really doesn't seem like some supernatural shapeshifter. It actually spends most of its day looking, well, quite unassuming. It's mostly just humbly scratching through the forest leaves on the ground, searching for its next meal of insects, spiders, worms, maybe some seeds. But the moment breeding season arrives, everything changes, and this bird basically transforms into nature's greatest imposter. When it's time to perform, the male lyrebird climbs up onto a specially prepared display mount. He spreads his magnificent tail feathers high into the air, feathers that, by the way, are shaped exactly like a giant ancient musical lyre. And he begins a performance unlike absolutely anything else in the animal kingdom. Instead of just singing one typical bird song, he performs an entire forest orchestra. Scientists have documented lyrebirds perfectly copying dozens of completely different bird species in a single performance. We are talking about parrots, cockatoos, kookaburras, and even hawks. It is literally as if one solo performer suddenly becomes an entire choir. Section 2. The science of the copy. How the lyrebird fools nature. Okay, let's dive into this. How on earth is a single bird physically capable of producing such a wide and flawless variety of sounds? Well, the secret lies in the syrinx. This is the vocal organ of the bird, and in the lyrebird, it's one of the most highly sophisticated sound-producing structures found anywhere in nature. The syrinx essentially gives the lyrebird the biological hardware to control airflow with absolute pinpoint precision. Because of this unparalleled physical control, their imitations are so incredibly accurate that researchers have actually watched other bird species respond to the lyrebird's call, fully believing that a member of their own species is hiding in the bushes. The lyrebird is literally fooling nature itself. To really grasp how incredible this is, let's compare them to an animal we already know for talking. When we think of mimicry, we usually think of parrots, right? But if we compare the two, parrots are primarily repetitive sound imitators. They mainly just mimic sounds they hear over and over again in a localized setting. Superb lyrebirds, on the other hand, are highly active environmental listeners. They don't just repeat what's spoken to them, they actively absorb the vast, complex tapestry of sounds out in the wild. And achieving this level of perfection is a really rigorous process. Young males don't just wake up one day suddenly sounding like a chainsaw or a kookaburra. They endure years of practice. First, they constantly listen to the neighboring birds around them. Second, they meticulously memorize those highly specific calls. And third, they refine the performance over and over again. They just keep practicing until their sounds become virtually indistinguishable from the original source. Section 3. Nature's talent competition, the evolutionary reason for stealing voices. So we know how they do it, but why? Why spend years perfecting the sound of a hawk or a parrot? You might think, I don't know, maybe they're trying to trick other birds into dropping their food, or maybe scaring off predators. But surprisingly, that is not it at all. The ultimate goal is much simpler. They just want to impress females. Think of this as nature's ultimate high-stakes talent competition. The male lyrebird with the largest, most accurate, and most diverse sound collection is the one who has the absolute greatest chance of finding a mate. The more impressive the performance, the better his chances of passing on his genes to the next generation. So the crucial point is understanding what the female is actually listening for. She isn't just enjoying a nice concert. As scientists believe, she is rigorously judging him on a biological level. She's evaluating the quality of his sounds, yes, for sure, but also his memory, his overall intelligence, his health, and his worldly experience. A bird that's capable of mastering dozens of different complex calls proves to a female that he possesses an extraordinary brain and excellent, robust survival skills.
Section 4. When birds copy machines. The ultimate twist in the forest.
Now, this is where the story gets wildly fascinating. What happens when humans step into this untouched environment? What happens when our noisy technology enters the quiet Australian forests? Well, the Superb Lyrebird did what it does best. It started adding completely unnatural sounds to its repertoire. It's an absolutely absurd list. Lyrebirds have been actively recorded perfectly imitating camera shutters, car alarms, chainsaws, dog barks, construction equipment, and even mobile phone ringtones. And this brilliantly illustrates their capability. Actually, there's a famous anecdote of one specific lyrebird that perfectly copied the heavy logging machinery it heard operating for years near its habitat. It literally sang the song of an industrial logging operation. I absolutely love this quote from the source material. Its brain doesn't care whether the source is another bird or a machine. If it's memorable, it can become part of the performance. Just wrap your head around the sheer absurdity of that for a second. To the Superb Lyrebird, there is no difference between a beautiful, ancestral mating song of a fellow bird and the loud, obnoxious blare of a car alarm. If it makes a noise, it's just another track to add to the playlist. Now, notice how exclusive this club really is. Scientists who study animal communication consider the lyrebird to be one of the greatest vocal learners on Earth. Only a tiny fraction of animals possess this kind of advanced vocal learning ability. We're talking about humans, dolphins, some whales, elephants, seals, and parrots. And right there, sitting among these highly intelligent elite communicators, is the Superb Lyrebird. Its extraordinary memory, precise vocal control, and relentless years of practice allow it to create one of the most complex, diverse sound libraries in the entire natural world. Nature really never stops surprising us, does it? The fact that a single, unassuming bird, just scratching in the dirt, can suddenly become an entire forest or flawlessly mimic human technology is just mind-blowing. So the next time you find yourself wandering deep in the Australian wilderness and you hear a strange noise, whether it's a laughing kookaburra or a ringing cell phone, don't be too quick to trust your ears. You might just be standing next to the world's greatest voice thief. Now, I want to leave you with a question. The Superb Lyrebird's mimicry is unbelievable, but nature is absolutely full of incredible abilities. Which animal superpower should this explainer tackle next? Let me know, and keep exploring.